And tonight, I'm very pleased to welcome our very, very special guests here from Seattle, I believe. We have Luis, Loza, hello,
Hi.
and Eleanor Ferron, hello.
To be
Well,
here.
obviously, what we're here to talk about mostly is the Lost Omens Ancestry Guide, which is the newest book out from the Lost Omens line. So I guess I wanted to start off by asking you guys, maybe for people who aren't familiar with it, kind of in a broad sense, what is the Lost Omens line of books? How is that different to sort of other things that that come out for Pathfinder? And then what is the Ancestry Guide itself?
Okay. So the Lost Omens line is our big setting book line. So you have the core rule books, you have your core rule book, your APG, your game mastery guide, and those have a tiny bit of world information on there. In the core rule book, there's a little section about our setting, the Age of Lost Omens, but we don't necessarily expect you to be playing in that setting. And you can use your core rule book, play whatever setting you want. You can go play existing settings, make up your own homebrew setting. But if you like our world, if you're interested in that, we have the Lost Omens line, which is all about our setting. It tells you everything about the people in Galarian, the nations, the history, all this different stuff. And the Lost Omens line has books that both offer setting information, so backgrounds and history and NPCs and all that stuff, but also player options. So you have new class feats, new magic items, new spells, and so on and so forth. So it's got something for anyone that's playing in Galarian, whether you are a GM or a player. There's going to be information that's useful there for you, and probably cool stuff for your characters as well.
I'm going to make Luis into a bit of a liar here because this is, well, we talk about the lore of Galarian in our books, but this one is very majorly skewed towards giving new player options. It could have been a rule book, honestly, but it's expanding on some of the other ancestries we have that are more Galarian centered than just your standard core ancestries, the dwarves, humans, elves. You can have those in most fantasy settings anywhere. Here we're expanding on things that have shown up in the APG and other places, except for the Shuni. Don't talk to us about the Shuni. They just missed the cutoff to get into this book, but some of the things that showed up that are very Galarian specific, like the Duskwalker, which is people sort of call it like a psychopomp heritage, but it's not quite. It's people that the psychopomps gave leave to have another life because their old one got sort of cut short while they were helping the Pharasma, the goddess of death, or just sort of her cause. And they're given leave to be reincarnated and get a second chance because they died, helping her out. There's also the Azarketi, which are very specific to Galarian. They're Aslanti, but to survive the apocalypse, basically, they wound up getting mutated to live underwater. And so
these
we
were
have
Gillmen, weren't they?
they were Gillmen, but like they probably wouldn't call themselves that, so we gave them a new name in second edition, the Azarketi, to call themselves.
Nice.
And so we have a bunch of expansions on those things that you've seen before, and we also have a bunch of new Galarian specific ancestries, like the android, which a lot of people like, some people don't like so much, but they are mostly located very specifically in Numeria because a spacecraft crashed there, and some of the android creating pods or stasis pods opened up and let the androids out, and now they're trying to navigate this weird fantasy world where they came from, sci-fi, and they're trying to navigate this world. And they landed in this area where they're just surrounded by, nomads who are very superstitious and don't understand what these glowy, shiny people are, and try and, make their way in that society.
That's really
I
cool.
think people like Starfinder players will be pleased to sort of see some of these connections coming in. I think we got the rat folk got renamed Yusoki in one of the recent ones, and we've got I don't know androids were in first edition, but they kind of slipped out at the end not, were perhaps largely unnoticed by a lot of people. But it's nice to see some of those threads connecting them a bit.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think a lot of people who came in from Starfinder will actually be surprised to see how much of the core of Starfinder actually was in Pathfinder First Edition. They had different names, but you had the Riforians, we called them Triaxians back then. They had the Kasatha, the Lashinta from Castrovel. Some people, I think they don't realize that elves are actually native to Castrovel. They call it Sovarian, but the elves on Galarian are actually aliens.
How's that decision get made, whether it's a Lost Omens book or whether it's a rules book? Is it just sort of production scheduling as to which one it is? So what makes this specifically a Lost Omens book, would you say, Louis?
It is partially a production thing. So, I mean, this was being worked on just around the same time the Advanced Player's Guide was being worked on. So, just a little staggered afterward. So the design team wasn't available to fully commit to something like this. But the fact is that we could give all of these ancestries, both the ones that we're shining the spotlight on, again, like the Azarketi or Orcs or whatever, and the new ones, a lot more lore information than we would be normally able to put in something like the APG. If you go look at the APG about orcs, it'll tell you all the basics, like their physical features, the basics about their society and religion and stuff. But now in the Ancestry Guide, we can then take that and run with it and give you information about their specific ethnicities and what orcs in Belkzen are compared to orcs in the Mwangi Expanse, and so on and so forth, to give you even more information that puts them specifically in the Lost Omens setting, and helps you play those characters or use those ancestries as NPCs and stuff in your games with a much better fit for the world than just the basics of, okay, they're usually this tall and they tend to be blah 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 and they worship so and so, and it's just a lot more information that the rule book line doesn't tend to delve into, because we have a little bit of setting information in our rule books here and there, but we try to reserve that for Lost Omens and our adventures and the like.
I can tell you we're getting a lot of love for androids in the chat from the Dangerlings. That's really fired up people's imaginations. Various questions. I did have a question actually from Jefferson Jardell. Can I make Android 17 from Dragon Ball with the new Android Ancestry and Monk class?
I don't see why you couldn't. I mean, we added a key form feat for the monks in APG that lets you power up and be supercharged with your key. So I think like you're ready to go. You can be 17, 18, there's a whole line of androids you can play.
Amazing.
Don't expect to destroy the planet. I think we're gonna say.
Yeah.
We know some of the ancestries that are going to be in this, and there's going to be some versatile heritages as well. Probably. How do you get to pick which ones are going to go in the book at the moment? Obviously, you've got a few things from first edition, which I'm guessing you have to try and get across at some point. But are you at the point where you get to start picking stuff that you're sort of personally interested in to try and get it into the book?
I think that's always a thing. As the developers of the books, we kind of get the final say on what goes in. I mean, almost final say. We do have to send our outlines to our bosses and get the sign off on that.
Yeah, we have to get the check off.
But yeah, we always can influence that however we like, but we try to avoid doing that too much. I think we definitely have had that happen here and there, but I remember the process for this was very much we had the survey results from the original core playtest release, and that asked for what ancestries would you like to see in the future, and most of those ended up as the APG ancestries. We grabbed basically what was left on the top list there, and then we chatted with everyone else internally. Everyone gave their favorite ancestries, and we had kind of like an internal vote, and we started whittling it down, and then from there kind of fill in whatever gaps we thought was necessary, or just would be a cool new thing, like the flesh warp or the sprite.
Yeah, the sprites are strange.
Certainly, since this was a Lost Omens book, we took the opportunity for the new ancestries to be ones that are very Galarian specific. I mean, we've got the Geniekin, which I think a lot of D&D players would refer to as the Ganassi, because those are very popular. But we also have the androids, which are very Galarian specific. The sprites. Well, you could play a pixie in first edition too. I don't know if D&D has sprites right now. The Ganzi, the Aphorites.
I think Kitsune feels very Pathfinder.
Yeah, I wasn't mentioning them at the moment, since they're also very lore in real world lore. But
Sure. Yeah.
One of the ancestries we haven't revealed yet is very Galarian specific as well.
Ooh.
Do we want to say that one today? I'm fine with saying that.
I'm leaving the spoilers up to you on this one.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, my spoilerometer just literally went off the charts here, guys. Now we're coming up for 20 minutes in the show, and I think it's soon going to be time to give away one of these things. So we're going to start in order, and I think the core rulebook shall be first. Now, of course, we are going to be doing this sort of pretty much semi-randomly, but if you would like the core rulebook, do let me know in the chat. And express your interest, and we shall do that in a few minutes' time. But Dan, have you got another question coming up?
I mean, I want to stick. I feel like we were near a breakthrough on this. What is this extra ancestry that has not been announced is in this book?
I was letting him off the hook there, Dan. But go on.
I'm excited.
It's a rare ancestry. It's very Galarian focused, and maybe before we stop talking about the ancestry guide, I'll tell people about it. But I'm sure you have other questions already that you had lined up.
Well, we've had a few questions on our Discord about sprites. People are really interested in how they're going to work, and the idea that it's you're going to be able to play a tiny creature.
Yeah.
How is that going to work sort of mechanically with stuff like reach and things like that? Do they have to? Are they going to be like a swarm? Do they have to be on the same square as someone?
We definitely do have guidelines for the tiny rules. It specifically calls out, there's a whole sidebar, actually there's a whole section about all these new rules, how to deal with tiny stuff, how to deal with flight, because there are ancestries that have flight and stuff, suggestions on if you want to have a character that has flight from level 1, what you should do as a GM, stuff like that. But the sprites themselves, they are tiny based on their reach. If you have a short sword, for example, you do have to run into someone's square to attack them. If you happen to have like a long spear, reach weapon, you can do it from the normal reach that you're used to. There's
Stab
also
them
rules.
in the toe.
Yeah, exactly. There's also rules for how to adjudicate if the sprite decides to just hang out in the fighter's backpack the whole time and sling spells from back there from safety. How to handle that and how that should work with the reaction economy. So there's information there, and if you don't want to deal with any of that, you can just take the pixie heritage, and you're small and you're just fine like any other ancestry at that point.
Nice. So they're going to how many roughly what we're looking at in terms of the rarity system in this? Are they kind of mostly uncommon, or are we going to have a lot of these in regular ones? We've got a lot of PFS players who sort of be wanting to know like how much are they going to get to play any of these characters.
All of the content here is at least uncommon, or if not rare. So it's either uncommon or rare, like the sprites are rare ancestry, for example. So that just means you got to save up all your points so you can unlock your sprite.
There are going to be some good concepts with it. I'm already thinking the concept of sprite gunslingers being a thing in Pathfinder by the end of the year.
Oh no.
Tiny gunslingers. Amazing. Right, well, I think we've reached the time, so I'm going to be super, super random. I'm going to roll a die to see which of the Dangerlings is going to get the core rulebook. And it is Mad Turnips. So, Matt, you have won yourself a copy of the digital rulebook. So, well done, congratulations! And don't worry, the random system will not include people who've had something before. So, you're not going to be able to get a clean sweep here. We're going to be a bit more fair than that. So, well done, Matt. Ross will be whispering at you any second.
With something like this, it is quite rules heavy. What's how do you work with the design team on it? Because like we know we've got guns and gears. Oh no!
we make them cry. Is what happens.
Well, 'cause I noticed because we've got Guns and Gears coming out later in the year, which is one of in sort of the rule books line, and there's an automaton ancestry in that. So do you have to kind of have some back and forth with the android to make sure that you're not sort of crossing over on, make sure they're different enough on what you're doing with it?
Yeah, we actually have a design team liaison. In our case, it's almost always Mark Seifter, who just sort of we back and forth with him as we are developing the rules for this book, and he will come and, like, if we have a tricky spot, he can come and look at it, and time permitting, he looks it all over just to make sure there's no huge clashes with whatever the design team is doing at the time. In this case, Guns and Gears has been announced in the Automaton as well, but this book, The Ancestry Guide, was done quite a while before Guns and Gears even went into production. So in theory, the android should not clash too much with whatever happens with the automaton, because they knew what was coming well in advance. But yeah, we always have someone designated to our Lost Omens books to just be aware of what's going on over here and hopefully prevent any clashes down the line. I say hopefully because our design team puts out a whole lot of stuff, and they really do their best, but sometimes I think they sort of collapse under the weight of it, and we over here in Lost Omens Land feel kind of bad about that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean the content, the volume of content that Paizo puts out, especially with the year that we've had, is just crazy. It's I think we kind of a year ago when we started lockdowns, we were sort of thinking, does that mean we're not getting new books? Is everything going to be on pause for a year? Is this? And it's just been announcement after announcement, a new book after new book, and that's been, I think, a real interesting. How different has it been? I know that Paizo kind of sent people home quite early and has been quite good at keeping people at home. How different has it been working and designing in that environment?
I think other than the in-person collaboration that we would have with meetings and for the most part, it's been the same. It does take a little longer to get communication across because you have to wait for someone to type something back and things like that. But otherwise, I think we've been, for the most part, doing pretty much the same stuff. We're still working at our computers anyway, so it's not that big of a difference.
Do you find you're sort of having to play test on stuff like Roll20 more, or are you seeing more of the digital side of the game through the development phase, or is it still sort of talking and tabletop?
I think for the most part it's been relatively the same. I was already running games on virtual tabletop and Roll20 and the like, so it's not any different for me. It's just more of my games are now on there instead of some of the games just being in person. But a lot of what our discussions and things we would have about here's this new feat and what do we think we should do with it and so on and so forth, were things we would have in our normal work chat in the office anyway. Mark, like Eleanor mentioned, has been our design lead for most of our books, and Mark sits in a different part of the office, so we wouldn't have the direct contact with him anyway. We would have to do it through chat, so it's not much different there.
We've got loads of questions. Thank you so much for the questions. Obviously, we're not going to have a chance to answer all of them, but we've had a few that seem to have sort of come up and are quite popular. We had one from our very own Stu Jackson, and he said, will it be possible to create cyborgs using half android ancestries? I think he's a keen Trekkie, so I'm sure the Borg is going to be featuring there somewhere. But will Pathfinder feature its own version of that?
At the very least, the current android is just a full-on ancestry, just like a human or a halfling. So you wouldn't be half android. You could be an android that's part demonic and be a tiefling android, for example. Ooh. You got a virus that you downloaded, I guess, it turned into a tiefling. That's where the half would be. But for the moment, no, I don't think there's anything like that. But I don't think that would be outside of the realm of the possibility in the future if we were to decide on expanding on the android or doing something like that.
Yeah, so the android in Pathfinder is honestly very close to a cyborg just on its own. They are both organic and robotic. I think the name of it gets the. I mean, obviously, we could have called them the cyborgs, I guess, but they are like they're synthetically created, but they do have like organic parts as part of that creation. So they're sort of like cyborgs, just on their own. If you want like a fully synthetic ancestry, you'd probably want to go for the Automata.
We've got one from Fondentenero. Will the Ancestry Guide only be about ancestries, or can we expect some other type of content? Well, I think we're going to be sort of covering this a bit later, aren't we? But is that sort of there's sort of general questions about how much content's going to be in this? Is it just the ancestries?
It's, I think, 98% ancestries or their lore or their rules. There is a 2-page section at the end that features new weapons and a few magic items that are ancestry focused. So there are, a lot of our ancestries have feats that say you can take this feat and you're good with halfling weapons or dwarf weapons or whatever. So there's a new set of weapons for some of these new ancestries here.
That's very close to what I wanted to sort of talk about, because one of the things the Lost Omens books has done so nicely is getting bits of sort of geographical and cultural information into different books. I think it was kind of when the World Guide first came out, everyone sort of thought, oh, it's not as big as the Inner Sea World Guide was in first edition, and now we found that kind of all of that content has been appearing in other ways through sort of other books. Are we going to expect sort of lots of cultural information through the heritages about sort of some of the areas of Galarian? Are we going to get more development of that from it?
Oh yeah. That's a lot of what the lore sections in this book is about, because as part of the Lost Omens, you have seen, if you've read the character guide, you've seen sort of what we have in this book as well, just a lot of information on specific ethnicities and specific cultures of each of these ancestries in various parts of Galarian. And for the versatile heritages, because they can almost crop up anywhere, even if some of them are centered in various spots on Galarian. We have what the various core ancestries sort of think of what when like one of their number shows up as one of these versatile heritages. Like what do dwarves think if they find an Aasimar in their number, or a tiefling or anything like that? And even like some suggestions of, well, how might an elven tiefling look different than a dwarven tiefling? And when you can combine all of like the culture and these various suggestions and the heritages off of or its lineages, the lineages off the tieflings, to sort of get inspiration for whatever character you might want to make.
What's being done with Aasimar in it? Because I think that's been something that's in previous editions. It's been kind of I want to play a human, but I want stats so that I can be a better paladin. So I'll just sort of do that. So it's one of the ones I was really interested to see what would happen with it. How's it been given a kind of a Galarian flavor with some of the heritages?
Well, you can't min max for stats anymore, because the versatile heritages doesn't affect your stats. So back in first edition, these were introduced were the Aasimar lineages. They if you were an Aasimar that had a specific ancestor, or maybe just a connection, you don't necessarily have to have had an ancestor, but like a strong connection to a specific type of celestial. In the APG, I think we had, I think it was just the standard, what was it, Louis?
I think Archons and Angels.
Yeah, Archons, Angels, and
I think Azada.
And we're introducing 3 more of those lineages in the Ancestry Guide. I know some people are going to be sad that their favorite lineage got left out, but we're going to be looking to include those in other things, and we only had so much space in this book. But so you can customize your ASMR in that way to have like specific magic and abilities and so on based on just what celestial you are that connected to, along with some like generic things for just your general ASMR characters. But as well as that, customization for really flavoring it with Galarian style celestials. We also have a few notes on ASMR, like where they might come from. We mentioned Tianjin in Tiansha, which is a nation that's pretty much all ASMR. Like a little bit of information on that if you want to maybe come from there, and the how various core ancestries might react to them, how the might manifest in those core ancestries, and that sort of thing.
Do you get is it easy to get dragged towards talking about the planes and things like that once you start dealing with celestial ancestries and stuff? I would assume that's a project for another book sometime.
Yeah.
Universe.
I mean, Planar Adventures came out very close to the start of second edition, and so I think a lot of things in that book would still be relevant.
We've had a lot of interest actually in the chat about specific heritages, and a couple of ones just to pick your brain. Of course, if you can't answer these or if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But we've had a question from Mask Penguin, who says that we've seen some stuff in PFS 10-00 featuring race from Arcadia. Are we going to see anything else from Sarusan or Arcadia in the Ancestry book?
I think we mentioned there's some heritages and other stuff that occasionally has call outs that say, oh yeah, sometimes they're found in Arcadia and other stuff. I don't think we mentioned anything about Sarusan in particular, just because that's kind of the whole thing about Sarusan is no one knows anything about it or anyone that's from there. But yeah, I think we definitely do our best to mention other parts of the world where it makes sense. So like Eleanor was saying, ASMR in Tiansha, there's hobgoblins in Tiansha or the Darklands. Yeah, there's different places that get brought up here and there. It still has a focus mainly in the Inner Sea region, but when it makes sense to talk about places outside of that, we definitely do bring those up.
I mean, Luis, that unrevealed ancestry I mentioned before, that's technically from Arcadia.
Yes, you're right. That's true.
Oh my
nation increases.
And another very specific question from What Do You Do Pods, who's asked, are we getting a Perikin lineage? Apparently they've had to homebrew the Perikin for their own home game. They said they'd be really interested in a full-fledged version.
I will say yes, and in fact, it's literally the very first ASMR feat in the book is the new Emberkin feat, which is tied to Perry's and gives you the lineage to Perry's. So there you go, confirmed. That's one of the 3 new ones.
Well, I should probably ask on your behalf, James.
Yes.
When are we getting sylphs? Are they going to be in and the elemental kin? Are they in this book, or do we have to wait a little longer for them? Because James plays a sylph on our regular podcast, and we've been homebrewing it for a year and a half now.
Eleanor, do you want to break this news?
I think I broke it before, but yes, the geniekin, or as I think all D&D players, and one of them as the Genasi, are in this book. That's all 5 of them. The Ifrit, the Sylph, the Oread, and the Undine, and the Suli, which is
the combination.
A combination of elements, not elephants.
So, yeah, that could be a new ancestry in the future, right? An elephant, something.
I think D&D beat us to that one.
Oh, that's probably true. All 5 of the Geniekin heritages are here. They're all their own individual heritages, kind of like ASMR and Tiefling are all individual stuff. So you don't have to be like worrying about mixing your Oread stuff with your Sylph stuff or anything getting in the way. It's all they all have their own exclusive sections with their own exclusive set of feats.
Fantastic.
I might spill that in first edition we also had some lineages for those, like if you were less of a fire Ifrit and more of a magma Ifrit, you could customize your geniekin to with a lineage feat like that. I think they're called the Lava Souls.
Yeah.
But those have come back in this book as well.
Which would be a great band name. So
Yeah.
Are you going to get your favorite self ability back? Is Windy Escape?
Windy Escape. Yes, I mean that would almost be the title of Elder's autobiography at one point. He used that all the time. Is that coming back, or is there something similar?
I forget, what did Windy Escape do?
It allowed you to go incorporeal for a very short amount of time, but it was long enough to dodge a blow or sort of duck out of the way.
It's not called Windy Escape, but we do have a reaction you can take when something is going to attack you, that you kind of cover yourself in fog to try to avoid that attack.
Okay. So it's not just going poof and becoming a little puff of air. Oh, terrific. Oh, I shall look forward to that.
I know, we've just respect you. I'm going to have to respect you again.
Respect again. I know, but that's fine, because I think we've got we used ornate tattoos and things, and then trying to put something in there that's I put something wind based to kind of do it, but it'll be so nice to get the actual proper stats. So that'd be great.
It's crazy that we're getting to, we're a year and a half into the game and we're already at the point where we've got weird stuff like Geniekin getting sorted out.
Our chat says, is it Foggy Dodge or Hazy Flea at all?
Misty Move.
Misty Move. Again, all good band names. But
let's look at one of the other specific ones. Let's look at the Kitsune, because I know they must be quite popular. That they're obviously in war and in Victory, they come up on an awful lot. Is this an ancestry that people have been demanding for a long time? Or what makes them cool in Pathfinder?
I mean, honestly, shapeshifting is really cool. A lot of people really like that. And just being, I think mechanically back in first edition, they had a big focus on charisma and enchantment magic and stuff. So they made really great enchanters, if you were into that. And honestly, like, their look is really cool. The fox people tend to look, they can look really cool, and a lot of people enjoy the look of that. Yes. So I think that
anyone who grew up with Disney's Robin Hood knows what the Kitsune are.
My coolest Disney character.
But they're very focused on sort of they have like sort of a connection back to Japanese lore, in that some of them are specifically celestial envoys, like very strong connection to Daikitsu, the Kitsune patron, and the celestial court in Tianxia. And so they even have a specific heritage called this. Or is it
the heritage? The celestial envoy.
The specific heritage called the celestial envoy, where they can invoke their privilege as a messenger of heaven to kind of try and ward off any divine magic that targets them. And they have the star orbs that they use as you'll see those in Japanese mythology too, but they get a familiar that's a little star orb, and
nice little thing that just sort of flies around with them.
I guess you could technically do that. Luis, can we do that with the familiar rules?
Yeah, it says it has no speeds by default, so you kind of just carry it around, but you can select a speed for it to give it a way to move. So there you go. If you want it to fly, you can give it the flight speed and then have it fly around with you.
This is getting very Legend of Zelda. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, but they're very focused on both shape changing or their like innate magic, so that they're very tricky, and you don't even necessarily know when you have Kitsune living in your town or village, because they could always look human if they felt like it. And so they're extremely interesting, I feel, because you have to ask yourself, well, what is it like to not know if you have these foxes basically just hanging out in your town, and the baker down the street is just randomly actually a fox. But if you're playing a Kitsune, what does it mean to always be living in these people when you're hiding a secret? Is it something fun for you, or do you always keep on the lookout for other Kitsune who might be in the know?
And so I've done a random roll, and the dice have spoken. And
nice.
Samir Abru, well done, congratulations, you've won the beginner's box.
What's the inspiration when you're creating an ancestry, or when you're deciding on an ancestry that you want to make? Do you start from kind of like, what is a story I would want to tell as this ancestry, or is it kind of like, here's a mechanic that would be really fun to put in the game? How do we get this into that? What's your kind of your driving inspiration that makes you want to make an ancestry?
I definitely think story is a big part of it. What kind of stories can we tell? Or because a lot of the stories we might want to tell, first we want to check, can we tell them with an existing ancestry, right? If there's a kind of a sci-fi themed feat, does it make sense to make a brand new ancestry, or could we give that to the android, for example? And from there we kind of decide, is it kind of scratching an itch that hasn't been scratched yet, or filling a role that hasn't been filled, and then from there we kind of work with making something brand new. But because we have 10 years of Pathfinder first edition history to draw from, it's very easy to, instead of having to make something brand new, realize, oh, we had a thing in first edition, maybe it was a monster, maybe it was a creature that wasn't playable but fills that role very well, that we can then kind of promote up to an ancestry. And only when we don't find something like that, or we might have something that has that can kind of feel part of the ancestry role, but we can then expand into something even far greater, kind of like what we did with the sprites. We had all these fairy fae type creatures, and we realized, oh, if we kind of bring them all together, we can say that they're all part of one group, make them sprites, or similar with what we did with the flesh warps, and took all these transformed types of creatures and kind of bring them all together under the one umbrella, and give us a new set of stories with that.
It's more of the stories I want to tell. I mean, Luis specifically calls that out. I would call out, who do I want to play, and can I play that character with what we have, and how much jury rigging do I have to do in order to do that? I mean, obviously, some people have been saying, well, I want this thing. I've had to homebrew it for so long, and they have a very clear idea of what they want. But you can just sort of go into it based off. I mean, it helps to have like at least one hard criteria going into it. Like there are new ancestries in the Mwangi Expanse book that were based off of some very short descriptions, but you still had some seed to start with when you were going into them. Is, well, what about this specific sentence or hook interests me, and ask people to go from there.
It was asked earlier on the chat. Do you have a favourite ancestries, Eleanor and Louise?
Kobolds.
Kobolds. Boom, straight out. There we go.
I've never played a kobold in my life, and I'm not sure I ever will, because it would ruin the magic by putting me into the kobold. But I love them.
Amazing. And what about you, Louise?
I've always been a fan of robots and constructs and stuff like that. So something like Android is right up my alley. I like androids. I'm looking forward to automatons. We had Weirwoods in first edition. I'm hoping we see them again in second edition. If you can play some kind of robot, whether it's magical or technological, I want it.
Because you got the Mwangi Expanse book coming out later on this year.
Yeah.
Do we take it from that we're not going to be kind of playing in Garand quite as much with this one in terms of heritages, or are we still going to be exploring that area? Because it's been really nicely highlighted in some of the stuff that's come out recently.
We definitely, like I mentioned earlier, we definitely talk about different parts of the world when it comes to specific ancestries where it makes sense. Orcs, for example, I mentioned earlier, we talk about the orcs down in the Mwangi Expanse, and I think there's a few different ancestries. We talk about the Mwangi ethnicities or the Garoon ethnicities that are out there. We have, I think, desert themed or desert focused lizard folk that are out there. And I think there's also desert rat folk out there. So I mean, those are based out of Guru. And so yeah, it just because we're going to be talking about the manga expanse in depth doesn't mean that we have to be quiet until we can talk about it. Now we're happy to talk about it here. And what is exciting though is if you like the Matangi orcs, they're the Mongi orcs that we talk about here, just a few months down the line, then you can learn even more about them in the Mongi Expanse book, if you want to get that deep dive on them.
The main Danger Club show will be in the Moangi Expanse by the time that book comes out. That we're on our way to the Slithering at the moment, taking up to 20 episodes to reach the start of it, but we're heading there, and so it'll be, that'll be fun to have that once it's out. A year and a half on from second edition coming out. Do you have a favorite book that you've worked on up until this point? Because they've all been so different, and they've all been, I don't know if experimental is the right word, but they've all been trying out sort of different ways of presenting rules and lore. Do you have a sort of a particular one that you love out of the ones that have come out?
I think Luis
we
and
have
I
the same
might...
answer.
Yeah.
Lost Omens Legends has been just a treat from inception to all the way through the release. It was really fun. It was a really creative endeavor, I think, and it just speaks for itself how amazing that book turned out, I feel.
It was our book of the year last year.
That's great.
We really loved it. And one of the things I love about it is that if you mention Lost Omens Legends on Twitter, people will just start talking about it. It's like this sort of band that everyone quietly loves, and everyone just wants to shout about it if it comes up. And you'll get a lot of writers will appear and will, writers always going to say, "Oh, I wrote something in Legends." It's great to see the number of writers, so many writers on the book, and so many writers being announced when the product page goes live, seeing them announced so early so that people can say, "I'm a part of that." Is that a conscious idea to kind of announce those early?
We try our best to get that information out as soon as possible, just because even for like on a professional standpoint, it makes it easy for these authors to say, "Look, I wrote for this. There's my name. It's confirmed." It might not be out yet, but I can at least confirm that I have written for Paizo and stuff like that. But on a personal achievement level, I know it means a lot to our authors. It meant a lot to me as a freelancer when I first saw my name up on the Paizo website associated with the book, and I could show all my friends, "Look, that's me, I did that. I wrote 2 pages. Wow." Just being able to do that is, I think, really useful for a lot of people, and it kind of makes it known that these books aren't just coming out from within the Paizo offices. It's not just me and Eleanor and the design team that write these books. It's a lot of people that work on it. You see all our editors and everyone else that works on it in our credits list as well, but freelancers are also a big part of what helps these books come together.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have a lot of say on when these books get announced, but we have been trying our best to add in more information when they get announced, so that the authors can announce their involvement with it and join in with the hype, I guess, basically, not just pumping themselves up as like, I wrote this thing, but getting to join in with the excitement that other people feel when they know that the book is coming out.
And unfortunately, we have come to the end of Dangerous Wednesdays. It is shot past. It's been so much fun hearing all about the guides and stuff like that. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you so much to all of our the people in the chat, the Dangerlings and stuff like that. You can, of course, jump on the Discord. We've got an active community, so come and join the fun. There's been lots and lots of chat there, and check us out at the Danger Club podcast. And thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure anytime. And of course, it's goodbye from our Dungeon Master.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good week. Be safe.
Absolutely. And it's goodbye from me, James Foxy Lockhart. And urging you all, of course, to stay dangerous. Thanks very much, guys. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.